It was their record of my life, not my record of my life. And we did it in chronological order from a baby forward. And they only showed me episodes. There'd be this episode, then we'd skip some time, and then we'd see this episode. So it wasn't like I saw my entire life or anything like that. It was like their selected record. And what they were showing me was how I had interacted with other people. After a while, it became very evident that's all they were interested in, was how I had interacted with other people. And to put it in a word, compassion. They only had one criteria for evaluating my life, and that was whether I had been compassionate or not compassionate towards other people. So things started off pretty good as a kid, and then they, becoming a teenager and then becoming a young adult and stuff, things got worse because they became less compassionate and more manipulative and self-centered. So it became, it was very disturbing to watch my life, especially because they were sharing with me their evaluation of how I was doing. So as I became less compassionate, they shared their displeasure and unhappiness with my life. And one would occasionally see me do something kind. They would get very happy, but there were getting to be too few of those occasions of happiness and way too much of the displeasure. The only thing that made this at all bearable was the fact that throughout it all, I knew that they loved me. So they invited me to ask any question I wanted to ask them, and everything they answered was very clear, very straightforward. Their teaching style was to not just explain verbally, but also show you. So I don't know, I don't think we ever went anywhere. Maybe we did. It's impossible to tell because, like, I'd ask a question about the future and would be in the future. And I think they just like created the future around us. I don't know if we went I have no way of knowing. I would ask a question about like the Holocaust, and we were in the Holocaust. I wanted to go on. I wanted to go on to heaven. I wanted to go on to experience the wonders and the joys and the beauty of heaven. And ultimately I wanted to go on and to meet God at the very core of heaven. And they said no. I was back in the bed, in that body, just filled with pain, with my wife next to me crying. The difficult thing about it has been, it's not a question about whether people believe my experience or not. I don't really care one way or the other. I mean, it really doesn't matter to me because, like, I had my experience, it was real, and whether someone believes it or not, you know, that's up to them. It really doesn't contribute or detract from my life one bit. What I do want people to know about is the reality of God and Jesus Christ. That matters to me a great deal. And I live to evangelize. I live to spread the good news of Jesus Christ. That's what I live for. God has tried to get through to us, literally millions and millions and millions of times. Matter of fact, everybody has access to God. All they have to do is to, I mean, we call it prayer, call it meditation, call it contemplation, but if you really sincerely seek God, God is not that hard to find. We have been a big disappointment to God because we have just consistently refused to listen to God. As a pastor, you know, people say, why does God allow this? Why does God allow this child to die? Why does God allow the war in the Holy Land to, you know, continue between the Israelis and the Palestinians? Why does God allow people to suffer, etc., etc.? And that question is predicated on a false assumption. God doesn't want any of these things to happen. It's all against God's will. It's our perverse nature, our sinful nature, that allows these things to happen, causes these things to happen. If we were following God's will, they wouldn't be happening. So God, we tend to ascribe to God all the bad things that happen and take responsibility for the good things to happen, when in reality it's just the opposite. God wants us to live in harmony with one another and in harmony with the creation. And the conflict and the suffering that we're experiencing in this world is of a human origin, not originated by God. When Jesus came into the world, it was a great opportunity for the whole world to find a new way of living and interacting with one another. And we all have failed, and I would lay the greatest responsibility upon Christianity itself, because Christianity were the ones that were supposedly the ones that were heirs to the revelation of God, and Christians have failed. And they were the ones that, were given the clear transmission of what God's desire was. God is unhappy with humankind, unhappy with the way the world is going, unhappy with the way God's beautiful creation is being treated. And God is intervening in a very direct way in the world today, and God and the angels are about trying to promote a spiritual awakening. In American history, we have these things called the Great Awakening. Well, we are living in the Great Awakening. And it was made clear to me that this is it. Wake up, or the slate will be wiped clean. Now, I'm not talking about the annihilation of the earth. I'm talking about, from a population of whatever, 260 million people, the United States could go down to a population of a few tens of thousands. We, the United States, who have been given the great blessing, more than any other nation, more than any other peoples in the history of the world, we've been given the blessing. We have the power and the material wealth to be agents, in church terms they're called missionaries, but agents of transformation to this world. And we have not fulfilled God's expectation of what we're supposed to be doing, which is bringing about not just material prosperity and security and well-being to the rest of the world, but more importantly, moral understanding, spiritual wisdom to the rest of the world. And in truth, if one has traveled around the world and you speak to foreigners about what the United States represents, what we represent to the rest of the world is violence, conquest, domination, exploitation, evil, pornography. And by pornography, I'm speaking more about the pornography of violence and abuse than just sexual pornography. And the United States has been given this role because we've been given this blessing. And we need to work on our awakening, which, going back to religious terms, is conversion. And we need to be doing it now. In the near future, it's going to be too late, and some other people will be chosen. We will lose the blessing. One of the follies that we live in is we think we deserve to be the richest, most powerful nation in the world. That's wrong. We don't deserve it. We don't deserve it at all. It's a gift from God.